completely liberated from whatever tradition, from whatever religion, who has chosen to return to earth with a mission to uplift humanity. In the Gita, Sri Krishna says, "Many have been my births, and many also yours. I remember all of mine, though you remember yours not. Though I, a fully liberated soul, am the Lord of all creation, and am in my true self and abiding in my cosmic nature, forever unborn. Yet I, by my Yogmaya, assume from time to time an outward form. O Bharat, whenever Dharma declines and Adharma is in the ascendant, I incarnate myself on earth as an avatar, appearing from age to age in visible form. I come to destroy evil and re-establish virtue." Krishna incarnated from ancient times, teaching Kriya Yoga to the ancient rishis. And according to Sri Yukteswar's calculations, Krishna's lifetime as Krishna was in descending Dwapara Yuga. And Krishna has incarnated again in our times as Babaji. And the Babaji being the first of our direct line of gurus, incarnated in a time very similar to that of Krishna, in ascending Dwapara Yuga, when after many centuries of ignorance, mankind is ready and wanting deeper teachings. And we can see just how in our own lifetimes, how more and more people around the world are open to such inner teachings. Swami Kriyananda said that if the avatars would not have come, no one would seek God. We wouldn't have an example to follow. In the autobiography of a yogi, there's the marvelous story of Babaji and Mataji appearing, manifesting on the Ghat in Varanasi, and how they appear as a streak of light coming over the river. And I rather imagine that maybe this is how the avatars come, a streak of light that is manifested in a human body that we can see, we can touch. And the Krishna consciousness or Christ consciousness or Kutashta Chaitanya is this divine, manifested within vibratory creation, in the world, but not of the world. The avatars have come to show us the way across the gulf between our consciousness and theirs. Once Swami Kriyananda, when Yogananda had him teaching in the public when he was just 22 years old. And one day Yogananda told him to grow a beard. That way he might look slightly older, even though at that time in history almost no one wore a beard. And so because of that fact, some people saw him and asked him, would he play the part of Jesus in this tableau, because he had the beard. And so he did so, and it wasn't a speaking role. He just sort of sat and looked holy. And then afterwards, that evening, Yoganandaji asked him, well, how did it go? And Swamiji said jokingly, well, you know, I'd rather be like Christ than just look like him. And rather than laugh, Yoganandaji said seriously, matter-of-factly, that will come. And that will come also for all of us. And what is it that allows us to achieve this consciousness? It depends on our response to the coming of the avatar. The avatar knows what we're going through because he or she has gone through it himself. He knows us perhaps better than we know our own selves. The avatar is like a doctor, we might say, who gives us a prescription. And the wise person follows the prescription. Someone who's less wise takes the prescription, frames it, puts it on the wall, and worships it. He shows respect, but it doesn't change him. It doesn't help him. And so our first step is to want to change, is to want to be well. Otherwise, God can wait a long time for us. In his commentary on the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, Yoganandaji said that there are those who have come into this world at the beginning of a day of Brahma, and they have remained millions of years later, still wandering in delusion at the end of that day of Brahma. God chooses those who choose Him. And then God sends us a doctor who writes us a prescription for living. And for us here today, that's meditation, Kriya Yoga, Seva, being even-minded and cheerful. And as we follow the prescription, the illness of delusion goes away. And as we become more like the avatar himself through this process, with self-offering and attunement, and as we imitate the avatar, also his grace becomes our own. And as we live lives in attunement with the great ones, then they're able to lead us to our true inner home in Krishna consciousness. Thank you.
This week, Thursday is Janmashtami. We'll have a kirtan here. We hope you can all come. And it's also the reason for our topic this morning. We were chanting earlier, from joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. This is the destiny, the glorious destiny of us all. We come from omnipresence. We feel separate from omnipresence for a while, and then we merge back into omnipresence. And Yogananda said, this is our reality. We just need to improve our knowing. You know, Krishna is the Lord, He loves us very much. He's the Lord of love. He's the Lord of light. He's the Lord of power. And He wants to share that love and light and power with us. And it's ours for the asking. It's ours for attuning ourselves to receive what He's just trying to give us all the time. And sometimes we need to just improve our knowing more, because sometimes we do things to make us feel separate from God. Even though we want to be one with Him, we continually do things that make us feel separated from Him. And one of these things, here he's trying to love us, and we're constantly judging ourselves. We're constantly getting down on ourselves for mistakes that we make. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I didn't do that right. I should have said that. Oh, my energy was wrong there. And we just bash and bash and bash ourselves. And yet, do you think Krishna's paying attention to our mistakes? He's not. He's just saying, this is my beloved child, and she's growing up. And this is just what happens when people grow up. They make little mistakes, and then they learn from their mistakes, and then they become more and more and more loving. So the other things we do to keep ourselves separate from God is just really holding on to the things that we want and the things that we don't want, and these past habits of maybe laziness and self-judgment, like we were saying, or negativity, or moods, or whatever it might be, things that make us feel separate from God. Somehow we tend to think that those habits and tendencies is who we are, and we're afraid to let go of them. Here Krishna is telling us, fight, put out the energy, lift your energy so that you can be with me. And we're sort of like, no, but I really, I don't like having moods, but that's just who I am. And he said, no, that's not really who you are. You need to lift your energy and realize that that's not who you are. So our job is to fight that battle every day, to remember who we are and to lift our energy and to attune ourselves with his consciousness so that we can feel our oneness with him. One of the other stories, we were talking about stories of Swami Kriyananda yesterday. We were reading The New Path, and a few of us were talking about one of the chapters. And one of the stories is that Swamiji was standing outside the Hollywood church, and Master asked him to greet all of the congregation members at the end of church. And what that meant was he stands outside the door and he shakes hands with everybody as they come out, and he greets everybody. And so he did that, and he did the whole congregation afterwards, thanking them for coming and saying thank you and greeting them. And he told Yogananda at the end, he goes, oh, I felt so drained. I was just exhausted after all that shaking hands and all that relating to all those people. And Yogananda said, that's because you were thinking of yourself. You weren't thinking that this is God's energy flowing through you. Try that next time. Sure enough, Swamiji just felt God, thinking of God the whole time. He saw the God in each person that he was shaking hands with, and he shook up. And he said at the end, he had more energy than he had started with. And so, just that divine, infinite energy just was going through him when he wasn't thinking of himself. And when I was thinking of the analogy of a surfer on a wave. And, when we're beginning surfers, everybody's just paying attention to the board. Well, are my feet on the board? Are they going to fall off the board? Am I going to fall off the board? And we're just kind of focused on the board, whereas the experienced surfers are thinking of the wave. They're thinking, this is the power that's going to give me a good ride. And so they're just tuning in with the wave, and their whole focus is on the wave. And so once the wave starts, that energy is behind them, and then the surfer can do whatever he needs to do, but he's got that wave behind him, flowing through him. And that's if we just kind of forget about our board, but we forget about ourselves and let that energy flow through. Another story, we're telling lots of stories this morning about Swamiji. When he was young, he was still, I think, 22 years old, and he would put the ads in the newspaper for when Master would be speaking at the different churches. And he put the ad in the newspaper when Yogananda was going to go down to San Diego Church and give a lecture. And he was thinking, Swamiji was thinking, the people in San Diego are going to be so happy. It's been 2 months since Master's been down speaking at that church. And as he wrote the ad and he submitted it to the paper, he was just feeling such a blessing for all those people in San Diego. And so the day before the San Diego talk, one of the other monks came in to Swamiji and said, Master said, you have to go in his place down to San Diego tomorrow. And he said, what? And he said, and after you do the service, you have to give a Kriya initiation. He said, what? He had only been to one Kriya initiation, and his own. And once before he had witnessed a Kriya initiation, but he was too new. He hadn't even taken it, but he did witness it. And so Swamiji said, of course I will obey what Master tells me to do, but I feel so sorry for these people. And so sure enough, Swamiji was there, and what would happen on that church is there was this big curtain, and Swamiji was sitting on the chair, and he could hear noise on the other side of the curtain, and the curtains parted, and there were people out the windows, all standing room only. There were so many people, and here's 22-year-old Swamiji just sitting there on the chair instead of Master. And Swamiji said he could just feel everybody's disappointment. And, Swami said his own discomfort in having to give a lecture, which, by the way, he had never given a lecture before, his own discomfort at giving the lecture was completely set aside in his empathy for these people. And so he wasn't thinking of himself at all. He was just thinking about these poor people. And he just gave a really nice lecture. But he had removed himself, his little ego, his self-deprecating ego out of the way. And because he was thinking of them, and of course because he was praying desperately for his Master to flow through him, he gave a wonderful lecture and Kriya ceremony after that. And Master told Swamiji when he got back from San Diego, he said, I heard your lecture was very good. He said, I heard that you had a lot of humility. And of course, that's just self-forgetfulness. And that's why people loved it so much. And one time, one of the monks complimented Master on his humility, said, oh, Master, you're so humble. And Master just looked matter-of-factly at the disciple and said, how can there be humility when there's no sense of self? How can there be humility when there's no sense of self? And the other thing that Master said, when this I shall die, then shall I know who am I. When this little I shall die, then shall I know who am I. Swamiji, in so many ways, would try to tap into Master's power and love and grace. And that's what we need to do to attain Krishna's consciousness. There's this book, Swami Kriyananda, As We Have Known Him. And there's so many stories about the way that Swami Kriyananda would rely on his guru's love, his guru's power, his guru's light, in order for him to do anything in this world. And there's lots of examples, but one of the disciples happened to be a Hell's Angel motorcycle guy who did a lot of strange things, but loved Swami so much and loved Master so much. And one time this guy was Swami had bought a new moped, and he would ride around the community on a moped, but none of the roads were paved, and there's hills and rocks, and sure enough, one day he fell and he really hurt his leg. And he was sitting in his home with his leg up on a chair, and this Hell's Angel guy comes running in and says, Swamiji, you won't believe what happened, you won't believe what happened. I was riding and this big truck hit me on the motorcycle. He said, I should be dead. I can't believe I'm not dead. I should be dead. I don't know how I'm not dead. The truck even hit me on the motorcycle, and I don't even have a scratch. And Asha was sitting there, and Asha just said, wow, that's just incredible. Like, when did that happen? Yesterday? Oh, what time yesterday? It was the exact same time when Swamiji fell on his moped. And, Swamiji had no idea, but the power of his guru was flowing through him and saved his disciple. So many ways we can tap into the power of the guru, the power of Krishna, to come through us and affect others. Because Krishna came to serve us and to love us. Yogananda came to serve us and to love us. Swamiji came to serve us and love us. They came to help us, and our job also is to help others. That's also our job, whether we know it or not. It's our dharma. And so when you think of the energy that's flowing through us, the magnetism that's flowing through us, in all our classes we're talking about this energy that flows through us creates a magnetic field. So we have this aura, we have a certain amount of magnetism. And when two magnetisms are next to each other, the stronger magnet will change the weaker magnet. If the stronger magnet is a high consciousness, it can change the lower consciousness. So when we put ourselves up against and attune ourselves to a strong magnet like Krishna, like Guruji, like any of the line of avatars here, they change us. Our consciousness becomes more expanded. Our energy flows more strongly upward. We end up having a stronger magnetism. And it's our dharma to have a stronger magnetism, because then when we walk around in this world with our magnetic field, we influence others. Our magnetism changes our family, changes our friends, our consciousness, our upliftment, our attunement allows us to do our dharma, which is to help others also. Yata dharma tata jaya. That is the dharma of all of us. And so, also within that attunement to Krishna, with that attunement to that consciousness, he sends down love. He sends a vibration of light, of joy, of power. And it's up to us to tune into it. He plays his flute. He plays a note, a song that we all recognize. Because if we didn't recognize it, actually we wouldn't be here today. If we hadn't heard it and wanted to follow it, we wouldn't even be here. And so we recognized that note and said, that is who I am. So that's how we improve our knowing. We listen to that note, we tune into it. We also try to sing that note. We try to sing that song. Because that's how we attune with the Guru. And then we let that energy flow through us. How can you flow through me today? In this situation right now, with these people, how can you flow through me today? What kind of energy do you want to flow through me? You want it to be loving? You want it to be powerful? You want it to be full of light? How can I change this situation? By knowing that you're the wave behind my actions, by knowing that you're the song that's flowing through me. And we always take every situation, back up, look at it objectively and look at it as a very spiritual situation and say, what's being asked of me right now? How can I help transform the consciousness of these souls? Or sing through me. Swamiji said that the song Peace, which is one of his most beautiful songs, it said it wrote itself. It chose Swami Kriyananda to come through. We want Krishna to choose us to come through, to sing through, to play through. So we have to just get rid of our ego, get rid of our sense of separation, get rid of this blame and self-judgment, and just be open to let that song, to let that tune flow through us. And I'd just like to end with one of Master's poems from Whispers from Eternity. Demand for union with the Almighty. O Father, behold me through the pores of the sky. Smile at me through the twinkling stars. Strengthen me through the sun. Calm my feelings through the moon. Caress me through the breeze. Love me through my love. Throb in me through my heart. Breathe thine immortality through this mortal frame of mine. Speak through my voice. Help others through my hands. Use my mind to inspire them. Breathe through my breath. For within this fragile voile, thou alone can sing thy complete eternal song. God bless you.